are back. Switching up formats a little bit. We're going to be trying to do different news videos compared to different topic videos. Trying to jam both of them into the same videos, two separate audiences. We figured this might be a little bit better. If you do agree or disagree, let us know in the comments. If you like it, hit the like button. If you dislike it, hit the like button. So the topic today, continuing on with the series of What the F is a Bitcoin, is BCH, please. So we're going to be discussing where Bitcoin Cash came from, in addition to what's different about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. In addition to forking, if you're unfamiliar with what that is. So a brief history lesson. Bitcoin was having an issue back 2017-16. It came to a big head in 2017.
Yeah, it had been going on for probably 4 years at that point. Mm-hmm. Scaling on Bitcoin was not great. It was always something that was like, okay, cool, we can do 7 transactions a second. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, and then we got to it and we didn't cross it. It just kept getting worse. So people kept trying to come up with solutions, and eventually two camps emerged. There was the big blockers and the small blockers. The big blockers, which consisted mostly of the people who did the mining, said, hey, Satoshi in his white paper said that, in other comments, had said, when we get to this problem, we'll just increase the block size. And that is a good short-term solution. Small blockers said, well, why even entertain a short-term solution when we could perhaps, permanently solve the scaling debate and make it so that Bitcoin always scales. So one was a shorter-term solution, one was a longer-term solution. However, the longer-term solution involved some things that a lot of people didn't like, because it would allow for, things to no longer be on the blockchain. But before that happened, there's this huge meeting of minds that happened at Consensus 2017, where over 50 big mining companies and other companies got together, and along with a lot of the people who were small blockers, and came to this agreement known as the New York Agreement, sometimes denoted as SegWit 2X, where they said, hey, small blockers want to implement this thing called segregated witness, and we want to double the block size. Why don't we just agree to do both? And most people kind of agreed to do that. However, the Bitcoin Core developers, most of whom are employed by a company known as Blockstream, were never on board for that agreement. They said, great, we love SegWit. We don't like increasing the block size. Why would we want to do that? It was their mindset. So as things move forward, SegWit was enabled, and then we get to the part later where we're supposed to increase the block size, and some of the people who agreed to do it started to renege and back out of that agreement. And to this date, that block size was never increased. SegWit itself did allow for some increase in transactions, because instead of putting all of the transaction details into that 1 megabyte block, only special parts of that transaction are now part of that 1 megabyte block. So other parts are left out, which did allow for a slight expansion in how many transactions per second could happen, or in how many transactions could be put into a single block in over a 10-minute period.
So what is the definition of segregated witness for people that might not be familiar with what SegWit or segregated witness is?
I'm going to read it because it's easier that way. SegWit is a process by which the block size limit on the blockchain is increased by removing the signature data from the Bitcoin transactions. So certain parts of the transaction are removed. It frees up a little bit of space so that the 1 megabyte limit isn't full of the signatures and the transaction data. Now it's mostly just the transaction data. A lot of people, have some issue with this because that signature data was useful for an additional method of verifying that each of those transactions was legitimate. So there are other ways to also verify that stuff. So it's not totally gone, but it's just removing an extra piece of the puzzle there. But it does allow for more transactions per 1 megabyte block.
Well, what's the benefit besides freeing up space
I was just going to ask that.
For Blockstream to want to implement SegWit?
Well, Blockstream's whole business model relies on all of the transactions happening in a secondary layer to Bitcoin that's not on the blockchain. Bitcoin Core, Bitcoin as we know it today, is the only coin that is focused on limiting the actual capability of the on-chain, block, and trying to move all of their capabilities to the second layer, which is a divergence from the original vision of Bitcoin, which was that everything would be done on-chain so that it could be witnessed by anybody who had a copy of the entire ledger. So that's actually caused a huge rift in the community. And back in July of 2017, they basically agreed to, people decided to fork off, and on August 1st of 2017, Bitcoin Cash forked away from the direction that Bitcoin was going prior to SegWit being implemented. So the idea was that they didn't like it. Bitcoin Cash people didn't like the direction that they saw Bitcoin going, and decided that we'd rather stick with the original vision set forth by Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin, and kind of go in the direction of increasing the block size. Since then, the two coins have diverged, and there's been a ton of fighting between these communities. Everything from r/Bitcoin on Reddit, censoring anybody who says anything positive about Bitcoin Cash, unless they call it Bcash, which is a weird, nobody calls it that, unless you're, a troll on r/Bitcoin. But you might as well call Bitcoin B Core at that point. So I don't think anyone would like that either. But
so for the uninitiated among us, do me a favor and go into a little bit more detail about how that added SegWit layer works, especially as it pertains to authenticity and verification of all the transactions up until that point. My limited understanding is because all of those things are all in one place under the normal structure, then you can verify every single thing that has happened. But if you're removing some parts, and again, correct me if my description of my understanding isn't entirely accurate here, if you're removing some parts and then somehow authenticating and verifying them separate from the entire chain and then putting them back in saying, yeah, okay, this is fine, what's the mechanism in place there that still offers the same level of veracity, of authentication, of saying, yeah, everything up until this point that's happened is absolutely 100% certain and accurate?
Great question. That's a tough one to answer. That one dives really down on the technicals of how it works, which is honestly beyond my expertise level.
That makes me feel 1,000 times better.
From the way I understand it, without the signature data being part of the blockchain, the block itself anymore, you would kind of have to you'd have to go back to the point at which the signature data was part of the block,
right,
and then calculate from there until the current date. Presumably there are nodes that are doing this often and making sure that the network is still secure, but I'm not 100% certain on who is doing that and when it's happening. Presumably also you still can't use Bitcoin without having your private key anyway, so
right,
you still have to be able to privately sign any transaction, which is still not uncompromised. It's just that from a witnessing perspective, you can't as easily verify that the transactions are legitimate.
Right.
So to add to the confusion, Bitcoin Core has gone and implemented the Lightning Network, which is a scaling solution, which is really cool at a technical level. However, it basically takes a lot of the transactions off of Bitcoin's chain, off of the blockchain, which that feels a little dirty to me, honestly. I would much rather see an on-chain scaling solution, but that's a matter of opinion for most people at this point, and most people honestly just don't care, which is a little frustrating from a technological standpoint. But I feel like when Bitcoin was created, and the thing that made me like it is it was peer-to-peer electronic cash. The peer-to-peer portion is being removed, in my opinion.
Right.
In fact, the electronic cash portion is being removed. The way that the Bitcoin Core developers are currently marketing this stuff is that it's gold that you should put in a safe somewhere and never use, and then hope that increases in value. And then when you want to use it, you should sell that for fiat and use your fiat, which is ridiculous. The whole purpose of cryptocurrency was to get away from the fiat systems that we don't like, because governments can print into oblivion and inflate and decrease your spending power. So with Bitcoin Cash, they've kind of kept that principle in place, which I like a lot. And Bitcoin Core, they've decided to kind of go more the traditional finance route. And there's jokes about what's next, fractional reserve banking with Bitcoin Core. Like, come on. So it's a very interesting time for Bitcoin. In fact, Blockstream, who employs again most of the Bitcoin Core developers, just today has released their newest product known as Liquid, which is designed for large institutions to quickly move money through the Bitcoin network, but again off chain. And this is again cementing Blockstream's position as a transaction fee gatherer that isn't on the mining side, which is where transaction fees are supposed to be kept. So it's an interesting invasion to the original Bitcoin, ethos.
Hardest question yet. How do you see that playing out?
Al, if you look at the price of Bitcoin over the last 24 hours with the Liquid Bitcoin announcement and that it's going live, it's not playing out well for Bitcoin. It's also not playing out well for Bitcoin Cash though. So
Sure.
As a percentage of value, Bitcoin Cash has fallen faster than Bitcoin Core. So from the investment standpoint, from the speculation standpoint, people have shorted that and sold that more than the Bitcoin Core stuff. Bitcoin Core is still the gold standard and reserve currency for most of the rest of the cryptocurrency market. However, I believe that long term, what Blockstream and the Bitcoin Core developers are doing are ultimately harmful to Bitcoin, and either they will have to address a lot of the concerns that people have come forward with, or simply admit that they're basically just trying to help this for-profit company known as Blockstream, and that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. I think that what they are doing is expediting the death of Bitcoin, and it will lead to either Bitcoin Cash taking over on top long term, or neither. Maybe something else like Ethereum or something that we haven't heard of, or something that's still relatively unknown, has a chance to show why it is really a better cryptocurrency than anything else.
Dogecoin.
It's definitely Dogecoin.
I dare not dream that big.
You don't need to dream. It's a reality. So to back up and maybe spell out some of the concerns, Blockstream is adding things to Bitcoin and removing some functionalities in an effort as a money grab, because every time there's a transaction, they get a cut without having the transaction fees go back to the blockchain.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the more that they restrict Bitcoin's functionality, the more money they can make. So it's
beneficial for them to
Right.
remove functionality.
It's absolutely a conflict of interest in my opinion. So.
Definitely. To back up further again, you said forking, and I don't think we've ever actually described what forking is.
Right.
There's two types of forks. There's a hard fork and a soft fork.
Mm-hmm.
A soft fork, from my understanding, is I have words for this.
Soft forks are backwards compatible.
Yep, that's the
Meaning-
primary difference.
Right. So if you've got a copy of the Bitcoin software and you're able to read the blocks and authenticate them, if they did a soft fork in the future, your client, without updating, could still recognize those future blocks and actually see them as legitimate. It might not know that there's more information available in those blocks that a soft fork might have added, but they could still work on the network and still transact. A hard fork would require everyone to upgrade their software in order to continue using Bitcoin. So in August 1st of 2017, Bitcoin hard forked, which required everyone to upgrade. And here's an important distinction too. Bitcoin Cash also was a hard fork, and Bitcoin Core also hard fork. It was an actual hard fork that both sides had to upgrade their software. It wasn't just one that kept going, on the original chain. Even though Bitcoin Cash is closer to the original vision, it is still technically a hard fork because they increased the block size limit. So if a older client pre-August 1st of 2017 tried to see a new block that was larger than 1 megabyte, it would recognize it as invalid. So
Vomit all over itself. Got it.
Yep.
So that's the long form of the history lesson. So the actual technical differences between Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin is Bitcoin went with SegWit. They kept the block size the same. And you had a really good analogy when you're talking about SegWit and what it does as far as like a traffic jam kind of analogy goes.
Sure.
You said that it's akin to there being traffic, and you were much more eloquent.
Oh, okay. So specifically with like the Lightning Network too, Bitcoin Core's viewpoint of it is: imagine we have a highway and everyone agrees that there's too many cars on this highway. The highway can't handle the capacity, so we have traffic jams constantly. That's a problem. So Bitcoin Cash said, why don't we just build more lanes? That's a temporary solution that would alleviate the traffic. Bitcoin Cash still has very low transaction fees and very quick transactions, so including instant transactions, which Bitcoin Core got rid of. So that was the direction they went. With Bitcoin Core, the developers at Blockstream, they decided, hey, why don't we build a train system that's separate from the highway, and anybody who doesn't want to deal with the congestion of the highway can go use the train system. That's a great idea until they started to say that, oh, if you want to do these extra things, you can only do that over in the train system. And not only that, we're going to start removing functionality from the highway. We're going to start taking, in fact, we might even shrink the lanes, and their goal is to have almost everybody using the train system, which is a little bit more difficult because train systems, when you're going between Lightning nodes, you're not really peer-to-peer anymore. You're not in control of where you are, where your data is going and who's controlling it. So it's a philosophical disagreement for sure.
Interesting.
Great analogy.
Yeah.
Kind of want to go for a train ride.
Burn down construction. So Bitcoin Cash, what they did is they, instead of existing with a 1 megabyte block size, they went to an 8 megabyte block size.
Yeah, and they're talking about 32 megabyte block sizes.
Yeah.
One of the arguments against the increase in block size that Blockstream has brought forth is that it actually leads to increased centralization. Because if you increase the size of the block, you increase the required storage that a node would require to have the full blockchain on locally. So it's, if you go from 1 megabyte to 8 megabyte and every single block is full, you need 8 times the storage. What we find with Bitcoin Cash is that most blocks still aren't full, and that most blocks are below 4 megabyte in data at this point. So they're not filling up, but we do want the option for them to be more full in the future. Since hard drive storage is so cheap these days, I think it's a really weak argument that they are making that people can't handle the larger increase in data, especially since we've got wallets that don't require you to download the entire blockchain in order to work. They're basically referencing a snapshot in time, a checkpoint, if you will, and going from there. And then they can occasionally reconcile to make sure that they're still accurate, but it hasn't been a big issue. With the other argument is that bandwidth requirements would increase, but then again, the rate at which our bandwidth is increasing, at least here in the United States, is outpacing any block size increase. So again, I think it's a non-issue.
So we've heard philosophical principles. We've heard technical differences. We heard the story behind the separation. Subjectively speaking, where do you lean?
Subjectively, I am firmly in the Bitcoin Cash camp. Bitcoin, was the first thing that I found out about, and I loved it once Blockstream got their greedy paws on it and started manipulating it, I think it's gone downhill. Unfortunately, Blockstream has a phenomenal marketing team. They have just they are very good at the astroturfing and very good at making sure that any dissenting opinion is immediately marked as spam. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see a bunch of downvotes on this video on YouTube.
Hi guys.
From people who have either been brainwashed by them or are directly shilling for them. So.
And of course, we welcome disagreements and dissenting opinions. Please do leave a comment below. We love exchanging dialogue, all that
debate
good stuff,
is always good.
Yeah, please. If you disagree with us, if you think we're full of, let us know. Just give us the chance to respond.
We try to be as open-minded as possible, but when it comes to things like censorship, I'm not a big fan. And anyone who's posted anything on r/Bitcoin or on bitcointalk.org, the two largest places where people talk about cryptocurrency, it's very easy to tell when you say something that goes against Blockstream's philosophy, because you get banned real quick. It's almost a badge of honor at this point.
Aw.
So,
have you been banned?
I have not, but I'm not very.
We're working on it.
Yeah. I like to have the ability to go download as much as I want over there, but that's fine. That happens on both sides. The point is, it's easy to test. So,
create a fake Reddit account, post this video there.
No, just go say, hey, why don't you like Bitcoin Cash, or why don't you want to increase the block size? And it doesn't take very long. So
it's been a while since I've had a bunch of strangers on the internet tell me to kill myself.
Yes, yeah.
At least like Call of Duty.
At least 10 minutes.
Hearing somebody else tell me to kill myself is the least of my worries. Playing any sort of online video game.
So finally, since Blockstream is heavily backing Bitcoin, and it's pretty clear that Bitmain is backing Bitcoin Cash as they're dumping money into anywhere where they can to make it more robust, buying companies to put wallets inside browsers that everybody uses, Opera, Chrome, Firefox, etc. Will this come down to Blockstream versus Bitmain?
It's more like Blockstream versus miners. So Bitmain is the largest miner activists out there.
Sure.
And they certainly get a lot of hate from people that are pro Blockstream. So that's not new. But Jihan Wu over at Bitmain has been very he's voiced his opinion multiple times, and he's putting his money where his mouth is. I think it's good for the ecosystem and good for Bitcoin Cash. There's a lot of other great cryptos out there, though, and honestly, I would love to see, a divergence from using one cryptocurrency as a reserve currency for the rest of them. I would love to see them all fail or succeed on their own merit.
Yeah.
That would be the ideal situation for me. It sucks when you see, bad news for Bitcoin, like the new Bitcoin liquid stuff coming from Blockstream, tanking the entire crypto market. So, we'll see.
Free market, baby.
Yeah.
That's what crypto's all about.
Yeah, it is.
Don't sleep on Dogecoin.
Never sleep on Dogecoin.
First.
Buy, hodl, all the Dogecoin.
Buy the dip, yeah.
Doge never dips. Doge is always worth one Doge.
You're right.
So I think that's going to do it for us on this.
Thank you once again for taking us to school.
We'll leave it to the commenters.
With that, please leave a comment if you agree, disagree, or just have other questions. Like if you like, subscribe, hit the bell if you want to be notified every time we release one of these. That'll do it for us. I'm Jason.
Greg.